I'm just very thankful that the Las Vegas NFT and crypto community showed up to this. This is a big win for our community after a year of bootstrapping. We didn't know who was out here. There's a lot of pioneers, myself, Rob, all of the OGs out here, really leading a handful of communities that 1 year ago today, or this month, we had 4 people at the first ever NFT meetup. And now look where we are today. We have AndrewYang here with us. What an incredible moment. So what we're going to do here is Andrew and I are going to have a short conversation. We're going to have a conversation, and hopefully we can inspire some ideas for a Q&A afterwards. And when we go through this Q&A at the end, just make sure that you are very direct and distinct with your questions. We love everybody, but I'm sure there are a lot of people who have a lot of questions out here. So without further ado, AndrewYang, thank you for joining us.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me, Patrick. Woo!
Yeah, it's been incredible. I know you've been on quite a journey today out here in Las Vegas. I'm going to start with just why we're here, Las Vegas, NFTs, crypto. Over the beginning of this year, you've been to quite a few crypto conferences. You were at ETH Denver, you were at Bitcoin Miami, you've been on a bunch of podcasts. What is it about crypto and this recent direct action in the community that's inspired you to participate?
Well, it goes back to my presidential campaign, and thank you to Yang and the people who were part of that. So the presidential campaign was based on a number of things, but universal basic income was a big part of it. And one of the communities that got behind that sense of abundance or possibility was the crypto community. I spoke at Consensus in 2019 when it was a bit smaller than it is now, since things have moved so fast in the crypto world. And after that, I was like, oh wow, like these people get it on a whole different level. I also spoke at a Blockchain for Good conference. Like I've been part of the crypto community loosely since my campaign. And then more recently, when I was looking at how we can try and alleviate poverty, I realized that there were a couple of interconnected things I was seeing. One was the generation of value in this space, but the second thing was that DC had noticed crypto. You all remember that? Like during infrastructure, and it's like all of a sudden it was like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not sure I like being noticed by DC. I kind of liked it when they didn't know we existed. So why did DC turn its attention on crypto? They were trying to pay for things. Like they were looking for a pay for, and we're like, how can we generate X $100 billion in revenue? It's like, hey, like let's throw some crypto taxes into the infrastructure bill. No one will notice, no one will care. But of course, a lot of people did notice and care. So looking at those things coming together, I was like, wait a minute, I've actually learned, you all might not believe this, but I took to heart an Onion article I read in 2011 that said the American people hire lobbyists to fight for their interests on Capitol Hill. And there's a picture of like a guy in a suit being like, now they'll take us seriously. I'm on the case. I thought that was funny as shit. But I also thought I was like, that might even work. So in 2020, I actually hired a bunch of lobbyists on Capitol Hill to advocate for various anti-poverty measures like the enhanced child tax credit that reduced poverty for millions of families, including many, I'm sure, here in Nevada. So literally, it's like I was like hiring these dudes in suits to like go to people's offices, being like, "Hey, you know what really helps alleviate poverty? Money." And they're like, "Here's some data from your district. Seems like people really like this idea." So we had, so I learned something about trying to influence policy in DC, and then this was happening in crypto, and I was like, you know what? I think I can get my lobbyists to actually have some meetings on crypto, trying to talk people into sensible policy. And I'm not someone that thinks that total absence of policy is realistic. It's like you're going to have regulations at some point. You're going to have taxation at some point. So the question is, does it fall on this side of reasonable, or does it go toward the DC extremes? So those are the things that led me to start Lobby 3 and Golden DAO and start engaging with the crypto community in earnest, because I was like, look, we have to make our case that this stuff can improve people's lives in ways that right now, like, people don't understand. Like, we have to make them understand, maybe by showing it to them.
Lobby 3 is, first, can everyone hear us okay? It's okay? Both of us?
we need to move away from each other. I don't know if that's true, but I'm just going to give it a shot.
Sounds good now? All right. So Lobby 3 is, and I'll let Andrew explain it here in a second, was probably the first politically based crypto donation product that I've come across. And since then, there's the Forward DAO and I believe a few others that you've mentioned. Was there any resistance to creating a crypto fundraising / donation product for your campaign or for your vision?
So there's been a lot of crypto lobbying. I'm going to tell you all, this is not a knock on anyone. It hasn't been super effective, in large part because members of Congress, if what they call a corporate crypto lobbyist shows up to the office, like there's like a giant eye roll. It's like, oh, what are the crypto people here to tell me? And then when the crypto people are like, hey, I want this, I want that, there are actually different even agendas within crypto, because like there'll be like a Bitcoin maximalist, there'll be an exchange, there'll be like a different protocol, there'll be someone with stablecoin. So that like there are different agendas, and a lot of it is not really sinking in for members of Congress. And so we thought, well, let's do a couple things at once. Let's, one, try and make it so that, okay, let's say I wanted you to like me. And I said stuff about myself like, that's not the most effective thing. It's much more effective if he says something nice about me. That's why we all want to get introduced by someone who sings our praises, you know what I mean? So it's the same thing with crypto. It's like you need someone who's not crypto to be like, hey, this stuff is really awesome and we love it and it helps us. So the question is, who do you get to say that if you can't say it yourself? So that is, believe it or not, that's actually a lot of what lobbying is. A lot of lobbying is trying to get someone else to say the stuff that you wanted to say. And that has a twofold purpose in DC, because it turns out they listen to other people who are not from crypto more anyway. And if you're a member of Congress, who do you listen to more than an industry lobbyist? You listen to the folks in your district or in your community. If there is like a civic leader, nonprofit leader, a religious leader in your community who's like, hey, crypto, it's really helping, then you're like, oh, wow, maybe I shouldn't like be so negative about it. So we tried to activate that energy and simultaneously go to the community and say, look, if you want to help, there's a way for you to do so that doesn't require you to be like a DC expert, doesn't require you to do anything other than do what you do best, which is like join a community, buy an NFT, go on the Discord channel, like do some things. And so then we have regular updates about our DC efforts to the folks who are in the community. And the hope is that you have an inside-outside game. But because you're a DAO and it's it's genuine, we just put the majority of the treasury into the DAO anyway and said like, hey guys, do what you want to elevate the message. And so some of the ideas that people in the community are coming up with, it's like we should do a video of creators showing that here are these creators of color that are benefiting from Web3, and then have that video be something that gets popularized. So if you're the DC lobbyist and you hear about this video being made, you're like, great, like it's not going to interfere with my efforts, you know what I mean? And so the community gets to dig in and do what it does best.
Yeah. And that's what Web3 is all about, and that's what our community is really about. I've been networking with a handful of local politicians who've begun to utilize crypto as part of their policy and platform, or are just generally trying to understand it. Have you found any sort of direction, or maybe a way that's, or a platform, or some sort of questions that I can tell these politicians to help them kind of understand it? Is there any straight path forward to getting this as integrated into, let's say, the Las Vegas economy?
If I sit down with a politician or a candidate on it, here's what I found. It's kind of funny. The more entrenched you are in the political system, the less interested you are in crypto. The more of an outsider you are, the more interested you are in crypto. And one of the reasons for that is that if you're on the outside, you're looking for support from outside the machine, and crypto happens to be one of the most natural bases of support from outside the machine. I'm going to tell you something that hopefully will make you happy. The single largest donor to the Forward Party is a crypto donor. And that makes perfect sense, because if you think about the existing financial infrastructure and then crypto's relationship to it, it's really analogous to the existing political infrastructure. And let's say like an outsider's relationship with it or a third party's relationship with it. So if you talk to an outsider candidate and say, hey, these tools are really awesome and powerful for building community and financial inclusion and innovation, they'll listen. And this is the reality, it's both good and bad, is that they'll do something that helps them in their campaign. Like if they are looking up saying like, who's going to get excited about me, and then they find a thriving community like yours, they'll naturally end up coming and saying, okay, like I want to do something that helps you, because then you're going to be more excited about me as your city council person or as your potential governor. That's it's one reason why I think Erica Chaser here. I mean, it's very natural.
Shout out to that. So as we move forward,
but if you go to an existing person, a lot of times
we have faced some pushback. Las Vegas specifically, we've kind of circled around this idea that maybe Vegas is crypto, but Vegas is more NFTs. We've noticed that in the crypto space as you move more out west. It becomes
which, by the way, would make perfect sense because Vegas has this incredible creative strain, and that's like what NFTs are about. So that would make sense to me.
Right. Growing up in Vegas, you realize that Vegas is about social capital, social prestige, experience, access, and that's exactly what NFTs have begun to show forward. Does the Forward Party plan to use this emerging technology within its platform?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, we're essentially the Web3 party. I mean, three's in the name. We're the third party, Web3, Forward. So we already have it as an element of our platform, and we want to make use of the mechanics. Again, the single biggest donor to Forward is like one of the OGs of crypto, and I'm friends with a lot of like folks who are in the space. There is a ton of overlap with people who want to have a different approach to politics, as they want to have a different approach to a decentralized internet, or having control of your own data, or not having a giant tech company monitor every move you make online. So that the ideological alignment is just sky high between Forward Party and the Web3 world.
And Web3 is built off of entrepreneurs. You yourself are an entrepreneur, and that was something that you heavily identified with during...
I'm an entrepreneur who had the misfortune of getting into politics. No offense to the political figures here, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, you know too.
Erica's also a former entrepreneur, right? We've gotten to see this. The Forward Party, and we'll dive into this a little bit, is this going to be a platform for entrepreneurs that can find a group to then find whatever their political fitting may be in the world? Because that was what your foundation's built. A lot of frustrations within entrepreneurs is that these career politicians resemble the career corporate structure, which there's no path forward. So is that one of the visions of the Forward Party?
Yeah, we would love for the Forward Party to become the party of entrepreneurship and building and effectively trying to solve problems without necessarily waiting for the government to get around to it. You know what I mean? And that's been one of the fascinating experiences I've had. So most of you know I was a Democrat. I guess emphasis on was. I mean, I was a Democrat in part because of my environment. It's like I'm somehow making excuses. Whatever. And I'd imagined that the Democratic Party liked entrepreneurs, liked small business owners. And it made me sad when I was running for president as a Democrat and small business owners were like, hey, Democrats have zero understanding of what it takes to run a small business. And the truth is, I ran a small business. That's how I came up. And right now you have to ask yourself, what is the party of entrepreneurship? I wanted it to be the Democratic Party. It totally is not. The Democratic Party is not the party of entrepreneurship at all. Is the Republican Party? I mean, the Libertarian Party might be the party of entrepreneurship. That's a very real possibility. But the Forward Party wants to enable us to be able to build a future we're excited about. I think one of the reasons why libertarians kind of sense an affinity with me is that I was never someone who thought that the government was going to be able to do it. I think that's one reason why my key idea around universal basic income is also an idea of individual empowerment. It's of the fact that bureaucracy does not know best how to solve our problems or to spend our money and resources. And one of the frustrations I have in our political discussion, I have so many frustrations, but the predominant media narrative is around we're spending this on that. And it's we spend this on that. It's look, I've been around these systems. Half the time we're plowing money into it, and it's just not doing the trick. And that's why we're pissed off. If you spent that much money and it was doing the trick, I would have no problem with it. The problem is you're plowing money and we're not getting value. And then you turn around and say hey, we need more money. It's is that really the problem? Is it really that I'm not, you know what I mean? We have these dysfunctional systems, and there is no party that's actually saying hey, we just want the shit to work better. So the Republican Party has become the party of hey, let's starve the machine and lower taxes. And it's I can understand part of that zeal. The Democratic Party is just more and more and more, and please don't pay any attention to whether our shit is working or not, because if you do, you'll notice it is not working. So the Forward Party wants to be the party of look, let's get the institutions actually functioning at a high level, and if they're not functioning at a high level, then we're going to keep swapping you out until we find someone who can get it working at an acceptable level. Which, by the way, is how democracy is supposed to function. Except we have this two-party system that completely blocks out any competition. It's one reason why we are aligned with the libertarians about trying to create a mechanic that actually allows real competition to emerge. Because right now, the Democrats here in Nevada, what's their attitude? It's what? You have no choice, really. You know what I mean? That's really it. And by the way, if you don't like us, you're probably a racist, and if you become a real problem, then we'll totally call you a racist, because that's one of our moods. It's there's not a real competition of ideas or competence or performance to be had, and that's what I think people want. People want just that sense of accountability, really.
So, some of the greatest entrepreneurs of today have recently been speaking out against both parties. We've seen Elon Musk attempt to acquire Twitter, whether it's going to happen or not, because he said he wants to create fairness on both sides. Jeff Bezos has come out against both sides as well. Is this the rise of populism in America? Is this the end of the career politician? And do you believe that this is empowered by technology and social media?
So this really is very much something you all find familiar. So what's happening is that institutional trust is crashing in America. And that is one reason why crypto has become so powerful over the last number of years, that institutional trust has declined our financial system, and people think that the dollar is being manipulated in various ways, and so you wind up with initially Bitcoin, and then Ethereum and other protocols, and then NFTs and everything. So if you think about it, all of this growth is a result of dysfunctional institutions. And then you have our political parties, which I'm going to suggest are as dysfunctional as any other of these institutions, but they keep insisting it's look, you have no choice. Even though there is nothing in the Constitution about political parties to or otherwise. Our founding fathers were famously anti-partisan. This system is totally made up. I can go through the history of it. So we're at 160 years of this particular version of the two-party system. The two parties were ideologically essentially the same until 1964, when the Civil Rights Act was passed, and then they diverged. The South went from Democratic to Republican, and then cable news was invented in 1996. Social media was invented in 2004, and you wound up with this giant bifurcation, which is completely anomalous both throughout our history and in the world at large. Right now, 42% of both Democrats and Republicans view the other side as evil, corrupt, a threat to the country. which is one reason why we feel so frightened and agitated, because we sense that, that the country's getting like this. If you look around the world, the UK has 5 parties, Germany has 7 parties. So I did this and it's 7. Right? Sweden has 7 parties, Germany has 8 parties, Netherlands has 18 parties. And these are much more rational, resilient systems where, by the way, if one party succumbs to terrible leadership, it's not an existential threat. Because if you have 7 parties and one of them loses its shit, then you're not like, oh, we're doomed. But by the way, if you have a 2-party system and one party loses its shit, then you're like, oh, I'm really, really concerned. Because then everyone who's on that half falls in line under the authoritarian leader because they're like, well, better my authoritarian leader than the other side. Like we're being set up to fail. The system doesn't make any sense. And so the question is, can the system evolve to something more functional and modern and resilient and representative? Or are we just going to allow it to slump into authoritarianism because we're going to listen to people who say, like, nothing can change, while, oh, by the way, everything else is changing. I mean, like, on the face of it, really, like, and there are times when I, like, talk to my wife, Evelyn, about this, I'm like, I cannot believe it is left to me and the Forward Party to like, make this case, because it's so fucking obvious. It's like, as soon as you, like, think about it for a minute, libertarians have been making this case for a long time, so full credit to you. And I'm going to suggest that this case is very, very familiar to a lot of folks in crypto. Am I right? Does it like not feel the same? It is the same.
It's exactly the same. So what are the main challenges of the Forward Party? And we'll start here on a state level. I myself am unfamiliar with how the formation of parties start. Is it on the state level, and then you receive federal recognition? And we'll start here in Nevada. What is something that us as a crypto community or residents of Nevada can assist with the Forward Party formation?
Oh my gosh, we would absolutely love your help right now, where we have a thriving state party that's being set up. Who is here from, oh, look at that, they guys have the t-shirts on, from Nevada. Look at these handsome gentlemen. Hey! And I'm actually going to trouble you all to take out your phones if you feel like joining the Forward Party, which is, you can text the word Nevada to 855-659-4429. That's, again, Nevada to 855-659-4429 if you want to be affiliated with the Forward Party of Nevada. So we have this incredible opportunity here in Nevada that the libertarians are going to love, which is a shift to open primaries and ranked choice voting here in the entire state. Now, I want you all to appreciate the enormity of this opportunity here in Nevada, because this ballot initiative it would make Nevada the second state to adopt this in the entire country. At least 1.5 million has already been spent on getting the 155,000 signatures necessary to get this even on the ballot in November. The Democrats have already started attacking it, so you know that it's real. And you know what their argument was? Oh my God, I can't even believe they did this. They were like, this will be too confusing for voters of color. Boo, right? Is that not like boo worthy? Yeah. And then someone who's behind the initiative was like, hey, that's actually racist to say that voters of color will not understand how to order candidates. And then you know what the Democratic Party's response was? You're racist. It's like, it's just so bleak. Oh, by the way, the Democratic Party of Nevada used ranked choice voting in its own internal processes in 2020. So you know they understand and like ranked choice voting. So why are they against this initiative? Because it would create more competition for them. So they decided, control. They just said, like, hey, look, we've got this thing on lock. Why let other people mess with our franchise? So we're going to be against open primaries and ranked choice voting. Like, the whole thing, it's nuts, really. I mean, so on the ballot in November, thanks to the hard work of some people who are in this room, you all have an opportunity to turn the dial and change it so that Nevada has open primaries and ranked choice voting in virtually all of its races. How does that sound to you all? Yes. So that by texting Nevada to that number, like, that's the movement that you'll be joining. We have to win this thing in November because the Democrats are going to spend millions of dollars trying to defeat it, trying to scare people. They'll be like, oh, this change, really bad. It's going to be costly. It'll be confusing. it'll like hurt democracy, like all of these like completely crazy arguments. And so what do we have to do to overcome that is just to let people know it's like, look, no matter what you hear, this thing is going to be great for genuine choice and representation and competitiveness and accountability in Nevada. Like, you guys gotta, like, as you can tell, I'm very, very passionate about winning this thing. You're passionate too, right? Because you saw this stuff.
Yeah. When I was running for Congress, the first person I called was my mom, and then I said, stay on the phone, and then I got Harry Reid on the phone, and I said, Harry, I'm running on a Republican ticket. You know who I am. You know my family. And he said, I won't do anything to hurt you, but you will never win because you have too much money. Really, like I said, got sucker punched. I'm also an investor, so I have a few questions before I text something and say I'm in. I sniff test everything to make sure it makes sense to me. So I have a couple questions about what we're doing and why. However, I know you're doing something different. I have to go to another thing, but I would like some more information, and I would like to align with you if it's something we're building a way to create sustainability right here in Spokane. Later, we just found out we're going to get a baseball diamond donated to us for $100 for 10 years to donate food. Not just donate, but we're creating entrepreneurship because we're having veterans come in and learn how to rent these buildings and own and operate their own greenhouses so that we can sustain this valley, because I'm a fourth generation Nevadan and something doesn't smell right, and we are in big trouble if something doesn't happen, and we have a lot of potential here because we're a swing state. So I say, let's get after it. I just want to make sure that we're aligned on the same page because it's got to make sense. We don't want to
like you ran for Congress against the machine. Trust me when I say you're gonna love this freaking initiative. Anyone who ran for Congress against the machine, it's like this makes it so that anyone can vote for any candidate in any party right off the bat, like in that round. So instead of like locking us up, being like, hey, like you only vote this and then they separate you out, it's like anyone, any party, you can have multiple Democrats and Republicans in the same race, so the party can't even be like, hey, we like you because you've been toeing the line and we don't like you. So like it just opens up real choice and then makes it so that if you don't win, they still have to listen to you. And even if you get the same person in there, they have to go through re-election through the same process. So instead of just having to curry favor with the 10% of the rabid partisan voters in your party, they still have to answer to the Republicans, to the Independents, to the Libertarians, etc. Like, that's what's on the line in November.
But wouldn't it be a great idea if 90% of all the people in Nevada voted for one candidate? I mean, right there, who's going to fight that? 90% of the people, and there's real serious possibilities that we can actually implement that. That's not.
I feel like the only person who get 90% of Nevada is maybe Elon.
So here,
I think
I don't know if that's true. I don't know if we all like Elon.
There's plenty of people who could get 90% if they were authentic and they had.
so Andrew, let me ask you this then. From your experience, is the barrier to entry in the political space tougher on a local level compared to the federal or state level? Are the games the same that you've seen?
So you asked a question about how you become a political party. So this is fun stuff, guys. Like, I decided to start a third party, October of last year, so we're in month 8. And there are a bunch of rules around it. So you have to have state parties and candidates, which we've set up now and will be in, we think, 15 states by the end of this year, including Nevada.
Yeah.
You need to have. I don't fuck around. It's like we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. You have to have a national convention, and I confess I'm targeting Las Vegas for the national convention. You need a national headquarters, and then after you check a bunch of boxes like this, then you get certified as a national party. So we think that we'll be a national party by 2023, sometime in that time frame. Being certified here in the state helps move us in that direction. One of the major questions is how we play in 2024, and I do want to give you a glimpse. From our sense of it, Trump will declare for re-election in October of this year, so he can take credit for the midterms because he doesn't want that to happen without him, and then people will be like, oh, we can win without you. So about 5 months until Trump is back. And then from within the White House, what we're hearing is that Joe Biden feels that he must run against Trump. And so we're looking at a Trump-Biden rematch. Combined age in 2024, 159. 58% of Americans want someone other than those two candidates. So there's a gulf a mile wide for someone to try and rise up and say, look, these two parties, really, is there not a better emblem of the decay of the two-party system than those dudes running again? So there'll be a mile-wide opening, and then it's not going to be just like one candidate going through that opening. Like, I already know of maybe 3 major people who are looking at trying to run third party. And so the Forward Party is going to line up behind one of these candidates eventually. But one of the things that we're exploring, which I suspect you guys would find endlessly entertaining, is having a third party primary, like a competitive primary that people can enter. Because if we're right and it's Trump and Biden on the sides, like, there is no Democratic primary because everyone will get out of his way. The Republican primary will be Trump stomping on people for a couple of states. And so if you had a competitive third party primary, how many Americans would actually be interested in that? Right? So you could have so much energy around that, and then we coalesce around whoever emerged, and then that person would run up the middle with like this 58% of people being like, thank goodness. And that is what the Forward Party is trying to build towards over the next 24 months.
Are there any specific traits or skills you look for somebody who the Forward Party can back?
So running for president, you know what's fun too is that, like, having run for president, people who have an interest in running for president tend to call me at some point to be like, hey, like, you know, I'm thinking about making this run. Also, I will say to you all, I actually make calls too, where I'm like, hey, like, you know, maybe you should think about running. Like, you know, it'd be great. So those conversations get volleyed back and forth. Different people are approaching it differently. You know, if you ask me about someone to run, for better or for worse, we're at a stage in American life where, in order to run for president, like, there are a few things that would be enormously helpful. Like, being familiar with the American people would be enormously helpful. Potentially having access to high levels of resources would be enormously helpful. Having experience running large organizations that then give you credibility with like a large swath of Americans would be enormously helpful. A part of it too is just the will, the zeal, the patriotism, the spirit of service. Because there are a lot of people that I think would be effective presidents that are too smart to run for president. You know what I mean? Like there are folks who've said to me, it's like, look, Andrew, like, I don't want my 20s splayed out for public consumption and people like dragging my reputation through the mud. You know, it's like, that's pretty reasonable. Like, most of the people who are in this category have objectively good lives. And so, you know, like, they have to be willing to sacrifice that to some measure. So the folks that are in this narrow band of people that I think may take the plunge, like, the set shrinks pretty quick. You know, despite the fact that in a country of 330 million people, you know, it's like we have a lot of talented people, but we have this extraordinarily broken political and media infrastructure that makes it that you have to be like really, really willing to bear a lot of slings and arrows in order to stick your neck out that way.
Yeah, we'll see what happens here in the primaries and in the midterms. I do want to pull away a little bit from the political space and talk about the future of America. America has been pretty antagonistic towards a lot of entrepreneurs. We've seen a lot of entrepreneurs attempt to leave overseas, whether it's from financial sanctions or they're putting regulatory boundaries against them. Do you think America can still maintain its? Do you think America can still maintain as the dominant country of intellectual capital and still be the number one GDP producing country in the world?
Well, it's one reason why I was so eager to try and advocate for sensible crypto regulation, because there are a lot of folks in Web3 that are leaving the country because of the regulatory uncertainty, because of the tax either rate or uncertainty. We all probably have friends who are in Puerto Rico, in part for this reason. Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX are famously in the Bahamas for this reason. So this is already happening. There are some folks who are on the fence, who are still here in the U.S. trying to make it work, but they tell me it's like, hey, it's getting harder and harder to justify. And some of these people are just straight up Americans too. If you're not American in the first place and you look at this, you're like, why would I, set up shop there? The old argument used to be for the talent. Like you needed to come here because, we had the best technologists and the designers and the marketers and the rest of it. But that's less compelling now than it was. Like you can find very skilled technologists and designers and marketers in other markets now. So this is something that I would love to be able to answer more affirmatively than I'm obviously answering right now. Because I'm American, I love this country, my kids are American, and I want America to be the home of innovation, job growth, prosperity, and not see some of our best and brightest head to Portugal or wherever the heck. That's a loser. But when someone's looking at doing that, and I'm having a conversation with them, first I think, damn, we gotta fix this. But it's not like I can blame that person, you know what I mean? I'm not like, people have to make choices that are best for their businesses and their families, first and foremost. So the job of the United States government, in my mind, is to make it a clearer call to build here in the U.S. And if we lose that, we lose everything, in my opinion. And are we losing that now? We're in danger of losing that, for sure.
This is a common conversation within the crypto community. Now that remote working, the digital economy is on the grand stage from regulators, from innovators. The digital economy, all of us here, we know that is the future. There was a recent poll, I think in the last year, polling Generation Z of what they would like to grow up to be, and we saw I believe it was around 50% of them wanted to be content creators. For those who are looking outside looking in, it doesn't make sense, but when you're in the world of content creation, it completely makes sense. When you hear those kind of stats and you think about the digital economy, where do you think what do you think is next? Do we believe that this VR world or this crypto world is going to be the future of the economy?
All right, I've got two boys who are 9 and 6, and I tried to institute an allowance for them recently. I was like, hey, if you do chores, you help out around the house, I'll give you $10, something like that. So what did they immediately want to do with the $10? Convert it into Robux so they could play on Roblox. Like they just had the exchange rate. Like I can't get them to spend money in the real world. Their digital assets are 1,000 times more interesting to them than saving up for some toy or lacrosse stick or whatever it is. I'm definitely fantasizing about lacrosse stick because my kids are pretty unathletic. Like they're not in the market for lacrosse sticks. I wish they were. If my kids are any indication, then the digital economy is just going to grow and grow in size and importance in terms of its centrality, really. Because for my kids, it's more real to them than the quote-unquote real world. And I see that as a trend that's just going to pick up steam moving forward, particularly as work becomes more remote. And this is as someone who's saying this ambivalently, because I'm not sure this is all a pure good, but it's certainly what the future will look like.
I believe when the stats came out after a few months of the pandemic, work productivity actually increased from remote work. Employees are saving time on commuting, you get to save money eating at home, a healthier diet, although you do have to adjust for a few things with physical activity. Do you foresee a dominantly remote workplace of the future, and how does the Forward Party adjust to this growing trend in the workforce?
Oh, so I just want to shout out yet another candidate. Randy Hines is running for Congress, and his lovely wife Marlo. Randy's also a military veteran with decades of service, and he's, I think, the only candidate out there who actually signed on to open primaries and ranked choice voting. Oh yeah, Chase too. But you're governor, he's Congress. I'm just saying, the only congressional candidate we know. So if you ask about the future work, remote work, etc., remote work is here to stay. And this is as someone who ran for mayor of New York City and spent a little bit of time being like, hey guys, like maybe we should get back to the office because like we've got very, very significant midtown office buildings that kind of need people in there, or else it really is going to stop making sense pretty quick. But the reason why remote work is here to stay is that if you ask workers their preference, I think the number I saw was like something like 69% prefer remote. And even a higher percentage will prefer some kind of hybrid arrangement. And we're in a time in American life where talented people can vote with their feet, especially, by the way, if it's remote. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, I want to work from my living room, and if like you don't like that, then I'll just work in my living room for someone else. And so it's very difficult for companies to, frankly, like fight that particular trend. I will say to you all that I'm not sure this is, again, purely a good thing, in that if you're a young person, being in an office environment may end up giving you like a different set of relationships, like a different set of development experiences. But one of the issues is that if you ask that young person which you do prefer, they'll say like remote work. You know what I mean? Like if you ask me what I'll prefer, I will say to you remote work. But like I'm a 40-something-year-old who has 2 kids and a family and an established career and the rest of it. So I do think that people that lose out are the younger people who, if they show up, like they'd end up developing a particular set of, relationships, experiences, proficiencies, et cetera, et cetera. I also think that working remotely hastens us down this automation curve because you're kind of half automated if you're a digital avatar kind of beaming in and talking about it. I'm going to actually tell us a fun story about the presidential. So for those of you who support my campaign, thank you. Early on, I would write all the emails myself. And then there came a point when my team was like, hey, we got to start sending emails on your behalf. And I was like, well, when you do that, people are going to notice immediately because, it'll be you writing it or like something like that. And they'll be like, well, just check out what we do and like see how it goes. And I have to say, they did an excellent job of writing emails on my behalf to the point where I was like, oh my gosh, like, you guys are really good at this. So that's going to be AI, really, like, because like AI is going to be, like, we imagine that we're somehow unique and distinctive. Like, I thought like, oh, like, my emails are so personal, like no one would accept anything from anything else. And then like, it's like 3/4 of a step from some AI sending emails out. Like, genuinely, AI would make a better political candidate than the vast majority of humans. That's accurate, totally. So I'm ambivalent about this move towards remote work, but I think it's here to stay, and I think it's going to reshape cities in particular.
Yeah, this finds Vegas in a very awkward position, and we'll end on this segment and take questions afterwards. You mentioned that a lot of people are voting with their feet. Vegas has seen an insane amount of demand. The housing market's been blowing up. There hasn't been more than, I believe, around 2,000 houses on inventory over the last few years. We also know that Vegas was the hardest hit COVID city with over 30% in unemployment. Vegas, which has shown that it is not ready for this migration into the digital economy. You see a lot of promise in Vegas. You want to have the convention out here. Where do you see, or how do you think Vegas fixes this issue, or how do you view the overall vision in Vegas from your perspective?
When I was running for president, one of the findings was that Las Vegas or Nevada were literally the #1 market in the country for a proportion of jobs that are subject to automation. Whether that's freight, shipping, logistics, hospitality, a lot of hospitality also automatable. I'm told that a lot of the drinks are now being prepared by robots back at house, where like when the server comes and is like, like you order a drink, then it just gets like shoved out on like a bar by a robot hand. So this city ideally ends up a haven of reinvention and entrepreneurship, particularly in the digital realm. Like I do think there's a very powerful creative strain to Las Vegas. If you were to rank various U.S. metropolises by like creative density, I feel like Las Vegas would be top 5, right? So the work you all are doing, in my mind, has to be really integral to the future of Las Vegas, because the economy that's gotten the city to this point, I don't think is sustainable indefinitely in terms of the number of people it's going to employ.
That's why we're all here, right? We're part of Web3, the next division of Vegas. Andrew, I want to thank you for this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Las Vegas.